My guest this week is the Oscar-winning American actor, producer, and world-class archer, Geena Davis. After shooting to fame in films such as Beetlejuice, she spent a large part of her career now championing gender diversity across the media. I want to ask her today, though, about what words of advice Dustin Hoffman gave her when dealing with tricky male co-stars, and how Susan Sarandon changed her life when they filmed their iconic Thelma and Louise movie. Welcome, Geena Davis. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the memoir.
Thank you.
As well. And I think there's a theme in there that people may be surprised by, which is faking it until you make it. The idea that you, as an actor, got your confidence as you were going through your career, not the other way around.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Right. Yeah. I was a sort of a badass on screen way before I ever, felt like that in real life. But the roles I played actually had an impact on me personally, and I think exactly as you said, fake it till you make it. That I was practicing being somebody confident and comfortable in the world, and it was like an opportunity to try it on, and then incorporate it in my real life.
How long do you think it took? How old were you when maybe you felt like a badass in real life?
Well, maybe around Thelma and Louise was the first time that I felt like, yeah, I could be kind of like this person.
Yeah, I mean, if you go on a crime spree with a woman on a road trip.
Exactly. I haven't really gone on any crime sprees yet, but it's there. The potential is there.
We will definitely come back to Thelma and Louise, but that was in your mid-30s, so maybe around that point.
Yeah.
The book is called Dying of Politeness, and as part, a dedication to your parents, who I was fascinated even changed the spelling of your name to avoid awkwardness.
Right. Well, it wasn't that they changed it. My real name, my given name, was Virginia, and since my aunt was Ginny, they didn't want to have the same nickname. So my 3-year-old brother actually came up with Geena. I don't know how he spelled it when he said it out loud, but my mom always made it Geena, and later she said, people seem to love the way your name is spelled. I said, yeah, I just tell them you didn't know how to spell Geena. And she said, oh, no, I grew up in an Italian neighborhood. I know exactly how to spell it. Well, why did you spell it with 2 E's? Well, I didn't want anyone to think it was Gina. So
like vagina.
Yeah, as in the. And I was like, oh my God, my whole identity is based on fear of vagina.
And fear of kind of stepping out of line or drawing too much attention, which is a big part of what you talk about growing up.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And yet you went on to be an actor, to be the center of attention.
See, that's the weird thing, was that from minute one, I wanted to be an actor from when I was 3 or something, and which is to invite people to look at you, but I didn't want anyone to look at me. I wanted to be smaller and take up less space. But maybe, it's only in hindsight, maybe I realized if I could pretend to be somebody else, I could be more, have a fuller life if I could pretend to be someone else.
Because you started with modeling as well, which is the ultimate look at me.
Right, exactly.
Just about unwanted looking, though, it's interesting. A lot of your writing, a lot of your work is about women, but it's the advice from a male co-star quite early on, Dustin Hoffman. He gives you a line if you are going to have unwanted advances from male co-stars. Tell us about that.
Yes, he was giving me advice every day when I was working with him, and he said, never sleep with your co-stars. It's just a bad idea. It's not good. So here's what you say. And he told me to say, thank you. You're very attractive. I would love to, but I don't want to ruin the sexual tension between us. And then I had to use it on somebody who was Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, not just anyone. It was Jack Nicholson.
It was Jack Nicholson. I was still, I had done Tootsie, but I was also still a model. And my modeling agent took me and a couple other models who were also actresses or wanted to be actresses to LA, and he knew Jack Nicholson for some reason. And so every night we had dinner with Jack Nicholson for this week. And then one time I got back home to the hotel and there was a message, Geena, please call Jack Nicholson. I was like, call Jack Nicholson? Okay. And hello, Mr. Nicholson. This is Geena, the model. And he says, hey, Geena, when's it gonna happen? I was like, why didn't I realize this was gonna be what it was about? But then I was like, I know what to say. And so I said, well, Jack, you know, I have a feeling that we're going to be working together someday, and I would hate to have ruined the sexual tension between us. And he was like, oh man, where'd you get that from? But it worked.
Did you say Dustin Hoffman, or you
No,
kept
I
it
didn't.
to yourself?
I didn't.
Okay, because I mean, what's interesting about that line, and in the book, you are exploring your responses and criticizing yourself as well at times. You call yourself a wimp. You say all these sorts of things, and of course, it's the power of hindsight and experience. But that particular line Dustin Hoffman gave you is still about flattering the male ego.
Yes, exactly, because it included, I would love to, you're very attractive, right.
So would you still use that sort of line, or what do you make of that? Has it stood the test of time?
Well, no, I wouldn't need that line now. I just say, nah, you know, whatever. But
I suppose it shows you the precariousness of the women's role in these working environments.
Right, yeah. That he felt it would be necessary for me to boost their ego at the same time, instead of saying, no, I'm not interested in you, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the men that you also write about is Bill Murray. And you talk about working with him, and you describe, I mean, I thought I'd let you describe it, an incident that goes on against your consent. How would you describe what happened?
Right. Well, it was inappropriate from minute one of meeting him. I had gone to a hotel to meet with him. He was the director of this movie also, and there was a co-director there and a producer. So it wasn't like a booby trap or something where I was going to be alone with him in a hotel suite. But as soon as I walked in, he said, have you ever tried the thumper, which was some kind of massage device, a huge massage device. And I was like, no. And I went to sit down and he said, no, you have to try it. You have to lay on the bed and try it. And I was like, no. And I tried my hardest to be polite, but certainly I'm not going to do that. And then he was so relentless that I realized I'm not going to get out of here until I do this. And so I kind of perched partway on the bed and he put it on my back. But that was, that was very questionable, you know, what that was about.
And I mean, would you describe that? How would you describe that?
Well, it turned out later that I found out that he was worried I was going to be think that I was all that because I had just won an Oscar, and that I would be on the set and think, you know, that I'm superior to people. I don't know what he thought, but that was to see if he could make me do something I didn't want to do.
Okay, which is a real power play and very uncomfortable.
It's a huge power play, yeah.
But the reason I ask is because of the way we describe things now perhaps has changed. Again, when you look back on things, and I wonder why perhaps you don't describe it in stronger terms.
Well, right, because even I'm realizing after the book was done and everything, that when I describe it, instead of talking about how inappropriate his behavior was, I'm talking about, and I was so sad to see that I wasn't the kind of person yet who could prevent that from happening, you know, and instead of really it's all about his behavior, you know.
But I suppose there's still a restraint to you when you're doing
I'm
this.
still dying of polite, or maybe slightly in danger of dying of polite.
But I mean, of course you've taken work with your institute where you look at bias, you look at behavior, and yet it's interesting you can't quite bring it about yourself and about these sorts of high-profile men that you're willing to name and talk about.
Right. Yeah, I wonder if that has something to do with why I was so interested in women's empowerment and everything, is that I felt not powerful, and I wanted to try to help myself as well as others.
I mean, Bill Murray's been in the news again in only the last few days. It's been alleged he had a financial settlement with a female production assistant over allegedly straddling this woman, kissing over masks on set. He said there's a difference of opinion, but shooting was stopped on the production. And we're in 2022. What's your response to that?
That he said it was a difference of opinion?
Yeah, and the whole story.
Yeah. It's bad. It's bad. It's utterly inappropriate. I mean, that anyone could think that that was a difference of opinion when she was forced to do something that she didn't want to do, that's not the definition of what happened.
But I suppose hearing that story and about, I mean, it's alleged, I'll say at this point, and I know you don't know the details, I don't know the details, but all this time on, I mean, how does that make you feel when you've just described something that happened to you at the end of the 80s?
Right.
With the same guy.
Well, look, I wasn't under the impression that he would have changed necessarily.
But I suppose the world has changed. And
the world has changed.
There was a moment of change, you thought, you hoped, after Thelma and Louise.
Yes.
And you actually say in the book, nothing changed afterwards.
Right.
But you say everything in your life changed when you met Susan Sarandon, professionally, certainly,
yes.
and also had a big impact, personally for
yes.
you. What did she have that you didn't have at that time?
An ease and self-confidence in any situation. She knew what she thought about things. She knew how to react in the moment. I mean, I was living in a world where hours or minutes or days later, I would realize what I could have said or should have done. And she just lived in the moment and was very comfortable sharing what she thought. I mean, I'm not saying this was confrontational, but she just had an immediate ease and knew how she felt about things when they happened. And I came to realize that that I didn't even know how forget about that. I didn't say what I was thinking. I didn't even know how I felt about situations until I had time to think about it. But from minute one, I was like, wow, I never met anybody like you before.
I do love the fact that women come up to you still and say, it's our favorite movie, we've acted it out. And you probably get worried about that.
And I'm like, I don't think you did. I mean, at least, what part do you think you acted out? But I think we went on a weekend, just us girls or something like that. But, if you think about the stuff we do, people think of with Thelma and Louise as examples or maybe a little bit role models or something. But, I mean, nothing we do should be emulated, except being in charge of our own fate. That was the thing.
That was the driving force in it. But the rest of the details, the crime elements. And
the rest was kind of criminal.
Have you ever been on a real life road trip with Susan?
No. But I was thinking only recently that would be kind of a cool reality show.
Yeah.
Is Susan and I driving around the country.
You can't have a sequel. Everyone who asks you about that, I know you get very, I'm not asking that, but the idea of you two together.
Right. Driving around.
You should ask her.
I should ask her. I know. Could we? I mean, we would love it.
Is she still in your life? Are you friends?
Oh yeah. We're still very good friends. Yeah, she's fantastic to be with. She would often say when we were shooting, "See how much fun it is to work with women?" And I was like, "Yes."
You talk about the roles drying up as you got older. You never thought it would happen to you. I like the way you describe it. It's awful, but you say forced retirement. I mean, I know that you're very polite, but are you angry about that still?
It made me angry and very sad, but sometimes you replace anger with sadness.
Yeah, but if you were to really let it out, Geena, in the studio, and it's not a laughing matter.
No, it wasn't. And I'd heard about this phenomenon from the very beginning, that roles drop off for women once they reach 40. But I thought Meryl Streep and all the other female actors were going to fix it. And even if it's still true, that won't happen to me because I'm playing, I'm in League of Their Own and all that stuff. So it was stunning to see it also happen to me. Yeah.
But I mean, and then I talked about the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in the media, looking at female representation. I know you've set things up like the Bentonville Film Festival to look at this. What have you learned through that work that you feel perhaps is going to help change things?
Right. What I focus on with my institute is on-screen representations. And I started the whole thing because I had a daughter and started watching preschool shows with her and saw a huge gender imbalance. So I'm like, wait a minute, we're training them from minute one to have unconscious gender bias. You know, girls see there's not many of them there. Boys see we do all the interesting things. So that really spurred me on to want to try to change that. But most creators, most writers, most studio head people with green light power are male, and so you have to be able to in order to achieve what I wanted to achieve, you have to get the men in power also to see the problem and want to fix it.
And where do you feel we are with that? I mean, as we talk, Harvey Weinstein's back in court. We've obviously had the Me Too movement. But do you feel we're in a better place?
Well, as far as children's entertainment, I could tell you that in the 18 years since we started my institute, we have achieved parity in the lead characters in both children's television and movies made for families. So
that's good.
A huge difference from when we started. But the progress in other areas is pretty glacial as far as like female directors or editors or cinematographers, yeah.
So, I mean, your mood at the moment about that, would you say it's optimistic? Are you in a pragmatic place? Where would you say you are?
I am an impatient optimist.
Okay.
So I'm always feeling like, we can get there. But it's in some spheres, it's going to take decades to reach parity. Like, we can't snap our fingers and suddenly Congress is half women. It's going to take decades.
We've still only seen a woman in the White House when it's played on television.
Exactly.
Or in the films.
Exactly.
Not quite ready yet.
Yeah.
For whatever the reason.
For whatever the reason.
Can I ask, I mean, while this forced retirement's happening, I know that's when you were having your children as well, but that wasn't the reason, as discussed. You take up archery. I mean, I have to ask about this. It's one of my favorite facts I did not know about you.
Right.
And you're really good at it.
Yeah.
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 How did that happen?
It makes sense if I explain it. So I had been very unathletic as a kid. I was so tall that I was sure that I must be uncoordinated. So I didn't want to try anything. And then I got cast in A League of Their Own to play the best baseball player anyone's ever seen. So of course I had to train and try to learn. And I was kind of good at it. And I was able to pull off looking like I really know how to play baseball. And I did learn it to some extent. And then I had to learn other skills for other movies, sword fighting and horseback riding and taekwondo and different things. And I was kind of good at all those too. So then I thought, I wonder if in real life I would be good at a sport. And what would I choose? And I happened to see archery on television during the '96 Olympics.
Right.
And I thought, wow, archery is so beautiful. It's very, dramatic, and maybe I'll be good at that. And so found a coach, took it up at 41, and then became utterly obsessed with it.
But I mean, you nearly went and represented your country?
Well,
or tell me about...
I was a semifinalist in the Olympic trials.
Which is incredible.
I know. The last thing I ever expected was to find myself in the Olympic trials in my 40s.
And what do you think it was about the sport and you?
I think I probably had a bit of a natural, hand-eye coordination or something. But I dove into it. I became utterly obsessed. I was practicing, 4 hours a day, and I don't know. I just was very determined.
Well, I mean, also just talking about later on in your life, a late diagnosis of ADHD as well. What did that mean for you? How did that explain or unpack some of your world?
It was such a relief to find out that I didn't have a character flaw necessarily, because my entire life as a kid as well, I couldn't start things, I couldn't finish them. Once we started having homework that took more than one night to do, I had no ability to, stretch things out, and it was very, very difficult. And I was ashamed of that, this was something wrong with me, and for my whole life, it was something I had to hide, that I can't complete things and all that. But as soon as I found I was diagnosed with ADD, I was like, oh my God, that explains everything. It was such an awakening. And so in other words, I can start feeling like this is not my fault. Doesn't mean I'm a bad person. You know what I mean?
This is who you are.
It was very.
And did you take anything for it, or did it change your approach?
I didn't end up taking any medication for it, but it did change my approach. It made me realize that I needed coping skills that would help deal with that. So, for example, if I felt like I wasn't going to practice archery on a certain day, which I wanted to, but am I going to make myself get in the car? I would make an appointment for a brief time with my coach in the morning, and then once I'm there, I could stay all day and practice. But like little tricks like that.
Would you like to do a lot more acting again, though? Do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's my thing. Acting is my thing. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the same time, you've obviously kept yourself very busy, but I was thinking back to, we had Gloria Allred on the program, the feminist lawyer, and she was talking about women getting more radical as they get older. Do you feel that has happened to you?
Well, so I worked with Polly Bergen once, who was a famous actress. When I worked with her, she was 80, but she had been quite famous, and I couldn't believe how salty she was on set. She was swearing here, there, right, And I was like, wow, Polly, you really, you're kind of like a sailor. And she said, when you get to be my age, you just don't give a shit anymore. And I was like, okay, then I'm going to be like you when I get to be your age.
This is what I'm heading for.
Yeah.
Are there any dream roles for you that you think about?
There's one real life character that I would like to play, who is Eleanor Roosevelt. And the great thing about that is she was famous her whole life. So I'm not going to age out of being able to play her.
No.
And she was very tall like me. I think I could look very much like her.
Yeah, well, there's a great quote that's always attributed to her about a woman being like a tea bag. You don't know how strong she is till you put her in hot water.
I love that.
I don't know if it is definitely her, but I got given it on a pincushion.
Oh, I love that. That's a great quote.
So, okay, we've sorted it. Eleanor Roosevelt, and you're going to do a reality TV show with Susan.
Sure, yeah.
Well, it's lovely to talk to you and hear some of your memories that you've shared in the book, but also where you think we're at the moment. Geena Davis, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you so much for being with us. And until we meet again, take care and goodbye.